SpaceX developed a revolutionary technical approach that outperformed every existing space exploration technique ever explored in history. However, based on animated videos of how the Mechazilla catcher would work, it seems that the arm is being influenced, much as witches or sorcerers will manipulate anything. First, let's have a look at three components of the SpaceX Mechazilla catcher. The Mechazilla catcher is made up of the carriage, chopsticks, also known as catching arms, and QD arms with claws. The carriage task is summarized as the structure that contains the two giant arms. The arms are meant to catch the rocket in mid-air several meters below the QD arms, and the claws that are meant to stabilize the super heavy liftoff. The arm will be programmed to first catch the Starship's second stage, or booster, in mid-air as it arrives from space and place it on the launch base. And as soon as the Starship first stage arrives from space and lands on the ground, the chopstick catcher will also pick it up using an iron cable and properly place it on the booster so that the next liftoff will be ready. This is what Elon Musk refers to as reusability. This is TechSpace, and in this video we'll explain what has been running up in our minds about SpaceX Mechazilla behaving like a witch, a mechanism that appears to be controlled by some sort of superpowers. And we'll also take a look at the step-by-step installation process that SpaceX used to get it hung on the launch tower. So this is one of our amazing videos that you should watch all the way to the end. If you're new here, we specially invite you to join many of our lovely fans. Kindly subscribe and click on the notification bell. It motivates us to produce more fantastic content like this, and you'll have a lifetime access to all of our high-end tech videos. First and foremost, let me explain why the Mechazilla catcher behaves like a witch, or a sort of manipulative structure. Imagine a process where the Starship does not have a pilot to drive it, or eyes of its own, but as soon as it's coming from midair, on getting close to the launch tower, the Mechazilla catcher opens its two arms at a distance and catches it automatically without any external control. Perhaps a sensor will be embedded in the chopstick, where it senses when the Starship is closer around somewhere in midair before it'll open its arm and grabs it, then properly place it on the launch stand and turn to pick up the first stage Starship. This is a case that only magicians or witches will perfect with their powers, but Elon Musk figured it out with technology. SpaceX has been busy the last few weeks attaching the Mechazilla catching arms to the carriage, and they began to install the arm before attaching it to the launch tower. After 3 months of assembling this massive structure, SpaceX team installed it for the first time. The successful installation was actually a historic event that brought the entire space community together. The Mechazilla transformation began precisely when SpaceX successfully assembled the final section of the Starship launch tower around mid-July 2021. After 2 months, the SpaceX team completed coupling the QD arms to be lifted to approximately half the tower and then fixed to it with 2 sturdy hinges. Several weeks later, they added the actuating tip and claws to the catching arm's huge structure, along with the piping and wiring required for flexibility and rotary movement. Around early October, SpaceX began assembling the major components that will make it operate automatically. They flipped the arm vertically and staged it to a temporary support structure, then moved them to the correct orientation before stacking them into the suited position on the carriage attached to the actual launch tower. They finally installed 2 massive cylindrical pins with built-in bearings to leave the Mechazilla assembled and precisely balanced against the support structure, and most importantly, freestanding without support. Within a few days, the company completed the first step of installing Mechazilla on the launch tower without any issue. Prior to this, SpaceX technicians staged 12 skates on 3 of the tower's 4 legs, 2 upper and 2 lower skates per leg, and after positioning these skates in the correct position, the team was able to wrap its upper arms around the tower and began connecting the carriage to those skates with large pins. However, even after the carriage and arms have been installed, they will still be lifted temporarily by cranes. In order for this to work as expected, SpaceX must finish installing and rigging thousands of feet of steel cable that will connect to support the carriage and catching arms, and also to lift the assembly up and down through the tower like an elevator. The arms and carriage will also need to be engineered to work automatically. Discussions about catching super heavy began on Twitter when a fan posted a video of the booster coming to rest on a movable pair of arms extending from the orbital launch mount, which Musk describes as a chopstick. Musk tweeted that the catching mechanism was inspired by the classic film Karate Kid. Hopefully, Mechazilla and the launch tower are constructed to endure failures, since even a few feet of booster mistake may be disastrous to the launch site. The part of the construction will surely keep Elon Musk up at night, but certainly he and his team will at last leave us baffled once again. Actually, the strengthened hooks on the booster right below the grid fins are so tiny that even a few inches of misalignment will result in a failure to catch. They must have a high level of thrust in their tracking and arm movement controls. What we may be scared of is about the GSC tank farm and how the rocket will obliterate it all on liftoff, though the company seems to be constructing an earth berm between the launch mount and the tank farm, but those 30 Raptor engines plus or minus are likely to spew a powerful hot jet of exhaust in all directions based on how they've built it up so far. Most animations do a great job picturing how that will work. Our interest is to see how they'll get the cable to the top of the tower, around the pulleys, down to the catch arms, and again back up to the top of the tower and down to the drawworks winch. Another method that may keep us curious is whether they'll first run a lightweight wire in the intended path, link it to the heavier cable, and then just pull it through with the winch. Anyways, it should be intriguing anyway how they do it. Workers were able to wrap the carriage's upper arms around the tower and began attaching it to the skates with many additional huge pins. It's unclear how much progress was made in the hours after the lift, but the carriage seems to have been fastened to 4 or 5 of the 6 top skates. Working proceeded long after dark, implying that it only took a few days to finish all 12 connections. Nevertheless, even after all skates are placed, the carriage arms and skates will still be suspended by winch to actually put the structure on the tower, because assembling this catching arm on the tower must follow a particular alignment, whilst also considering the weight the Starship will suspend on it, coupled with its instantaneous force that could be generated as it hits the catching arm. It must not disposition the tower during test, neither should it operate below expectation compared to what was seen in the SpaceX catching arm animation video. The catch arms and carriage will also need to be mated with a giant cable carrier that is already staged on the tower to connect the structure to the ground, control systems, and sensors once completed. SpaceX must have constructed a first-of-its-kind launch tower designed to stack and manipulate starships and super heavy boosters in far worse conditions than cranes can tolerate and catch both rocket stages out of mid-air. Although the Mechazilla is not just a catching mechanism, the big arms are designed for slow-motion lifting and placing, just like the teetering cranes, which must be eradicated. For this reason, the arms are built as quickly as possible for unloading, lifting, stacking, and a solid work platform, rather than just capturing the spaceship in midair as it arrives from space. People are looking forward to the outcome of the FAA's hearing to solicit public opinion and how SpaceX will be given the green light to test the newly installed launch tower. Sometimes Elon won't want to wait on the FAA to make the company's first catching arm test. After all, it will be just a test and not an official launch. Do you believe that capturing the Starship from orbit is the best way for SpaceX to achieve reusability with the Starship? Or do you have a better reusable technique to suggest to SpaceX? Please do well to share your thoughts in the comment section below. Until next time, please like, share, subscribe, and whilst you're still around, why don't you click on one of those flashing videos on the screen for more content?